folks, Mark here and welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to do a bit of a overview, a bit of a look at the soup can challenge, or soup can at a mile challenge that we've sort of been doing here over the last few months, and go through some of the details and the reasons for it, that side of things. It comes from the reference to movies, so the Mark Wahlberg movie where shooter with the Hollywood impression of shooting a soup can at a mile, and that's sort of the premise for it. And I suppose it's also out of the comments and things that are here in a sort of a test case to point out some of the realities and not realities, certainly the not realities of the shooter movie, which is normal Hollywood, good movie, great movie, not trying to pick on the movie at all, but the people who think that that's anything real in that. And then there's some other sort of misnomers that people who think they know about long range shooting, some of them do it, some of them don't, but the inaccuracies that I suppose are in our world on that sort of stuff. So to start off with, we've done half a dozen of the go out and put the effort in there. I want to go through the details of the bits and pieces of what we're using, why we're using it, and then I'll go through a little bit more of those other idiosyncrasies that go with it, or maybe some myths that we're trying to bust, that side of things. To start off with a soup can, we needed to go and do this. We wanted to make sure we sat it up on something so it's not hanging on a board to make it easier. It's a real shot, takes a real spotter, takes decent conditions, you know, to be able to see things, all that sort of stuff to be able to do this sort of thing. So from our previous experience of shooting Coke cans at long distances and all the different stuff, you know, 24-inch target that we normally use and 12-inch targets and that sort of stuff, I wanted to make sure that it was off the ground, so it wasn't simply going to be confused between just hitting in front or hitting it, or the making it a little bit easier. I think we just plonk it on the ground to knock it over in a cloud of dust sort of stuff. Want to make sure it's a direct hit when you hit it, and go through, also try and make that as real as possible. So a thing that I sat a Coke can on many years ago and shot it at 1200 yards, a little bit of luck involved in getting that in a cold bore shot, but was this thing here. Forgotten what these bits of steel really were. It was just taped together and it was a little bit taller, but this has a little platform out of a couple of sort of U-shaped pieces here. I've welded it together. We put it into the ground to where it's about only this far protruding, so it's about 6 inches off the ground, and it gives a little platform for it to sit on. The can we wanted to get, we had normal soup cans. I looked at the movie, it was a little bit chunkier size can, so Sam got the job of going down the supermarket and see what she could find. We also wanted something that was going to stand out, fairly bright colours. She came back with this. You're an 820 gram bright red, so it was going to stand out in the paddock. All the yellows and things of normal soup cans were going to struggle a little bit. Nice bright red can. It is, in comparison of size, 4 inches wide, 4.5 inches tall. For people who don't know inches, and I could do that, it's 125 millimeters or 100 millimeters, but regular Coke can. It's a little bit shorter than a regular Coke can, and it's about 1.5 times as wide as a regular Coke can. So that, once again, really, there's a little bit of it being a bit wider is going to make it a little bit easier to hit. It really was about being able to see the thing in the conditions, because that's the big deal here. Was never going to stick it in front of a plate for the group shooters that want to see a group, all that sort of stuff. They want to be able to calculate the group and work it all out, that sort of stuff. Not what I'm doing. I use the dirt spikes to do that well enough as to what you can see in the long range camera, so you can see the group as well as we can. But really, to be able to see the thing by itself was important. So that's what we come up with there. That's the size in comparison for people who really want to know. And nice, bright and red and easy to see. So beyond that point, I'll get into a little bit more about the can and what we did there in a little minute. But that meant that we could see it. It's still pretty hard to pick up. I was actually able to pick up you can see the camera stands either side there. They're a little bit easy to see, it being black and similar sort of size. So you can see them, but you can find it. And there's also that little track of where we've been driving in and out, where you can actually see there was a little track there beforehand, and so it was something that we could pick up. It's that distortion in the crop or in the stubble that makes it reasonably easy to see when we're picking up and finding it. We're also, me and Sam, fairly experienced at being able to find things out a long distance and get onto them with a scope pretty easy, that sort of stuff. That's the nature of just doing things a lot and experience of that sort of stuff. So that was the basic premise behind it. I wanted to go through and show, to start off with, the cold bore shot in that situation. It is nothing other than luck is going to get there. In truth, hitting the can at all is going to be about luck. This size can out here, 1 MOA is 18 inches by 18 inches. So that's 1 MOA. So that means you are not going to guarantee, given conditions, given no matter how good the rifle is, given conditions, and even if it is holding down a 0.2 MOA group, that is still bigger than this can. So it meant that even to get it at all, even with 1,000 shots, luck's going to be involved. Dispersion, all that sort of stuff, you still need a certain amount of luck to get there. You can definitely get a group that ends up where it's very good, all in half MOA and nothing hits dead center. So that's with no conditions involved at all. With conditions, with multiple rises and things across to the target is around, I can't remember right now, 100 feet, 120 feet or so below the side of the hill that we're shooting from. The main drop is a lot lower than that in between, so more shooting across the valley. But that drop, for people who still don't understand it, unless it's above 5 degrees of drop, we're only talking 3 degrees of drop, it makes literally no difference to shooting flat. So the drop has no instance to it. The other side of things, talking about the drop, people seeing some of those ones where you can see the bullet, the base of the bullet dropping down. People have this idea that there's this massive angle. No, it's a small, slight angle, but you're seeing it from a perspective which greatly exaggerates it. You're seeing from behind. You're seeing a bullet traveling probably in the vicinity of that little dot. You can see 500 meters of travel, and you see it dropping in the vicinity of 2 meters of drop, so it looks all exaggerated to you on that sort of stuff. Maybe it's more in the 5 meters of drop, maybe as much as that, but over that distance it's not that much angle. And I'll go through that and explain it a little bit more, but it's not a lot of drop in there actually, and it means that you only need a 0.2 MOA shift of height in your elevation to make nearly 2 meters difference in where you're actually hitting on the ground. So it makes it very complicated, and part of the challenge of what we're up to is being able to adjust. When you see it just shooting just underneath, is it actually that it just scooted by and it looks like it's underneath, or just over the top and it looks like it's underneath because of our angles of things, like I said, there's more to this challenge than there appears to be. But that is what we're doing. Want to do it real, want to do it always have. It's why when we went to shooting it, going out to 3 miles, we still left it at the 24-inch target, not the can, the 24-inch target, because things don't get bigger as they get further away. If you want to make it easier, they do. It's not the way we do it. I'm happy with a really good group and not hitting and proving what it really is to shoot ELR, rather than making it competition side of things where you've got to make it where it's achievable. So, in saying all that, we've been through and done the rounds that we've actually put out there so far. We started with the 7mm WSM, did a really nice job, but didn't manage to touch it. The next one we went with was the 300 WSM, did a really nice job and bounced into it. Now I don't have that count here, but it definitely bounced into it. It put a hole in the side, fairly incredible bit of stuff there to hit the ground, obviously spin around and then put a hole in one side of it, and then the bullet fell out. We didn't realize the bullet had fallen out. I thought, okay, there's a hole in it, must be in there. Can't hear it because it's soup. We actually cut the top off and pulled it out. There was no bullet in there. It just put an almost full size 30 caliber hole in there and the bullet fell out. So that was a hit, but by ricochet, and it managed to still go straight in. So fairly phenomenal set of circumstances. Anyway, you get that. I think the next one round was the the 30-338 Lapua Magnum. So a 338 Lapua Magnum, neck down to a 30 cal, something that is not banned in Western Australia. It's factory round is banned, but the unfactory, which this is not banned. And there it is. So it's a 30 cal. So that's the 245 grain projectile that was traveling at the 32 or 3150 feet per second. I've forgotten exactly. That one directly hit it. And I'll go through quickly. That directly hit it. I think there's some people confused, thinking, oh, it didn't really hit the dust and that sort of stuff, and not understanding. I'll get back to it, but that was a direct hit, I think, on the 5th shot. So luck involved. This is a better, faster, heavier round, but really luck involved. No, I'm not going to take that away from what the situation really was. The next one round was the 300 Win Mag. It did, once again, a very good group, but didn't get the job done. The same job for the 338 Win Mag with the 300 grain projectile in there. Did a very good job, a lot more mirage, so a harder job for it. But once again, very good group, but no cigar. And then there's Sam with the 308. That's the 208, that's quite a special 308, 208 grain bullet, traveling at, I think, 2600 feet per second. So doing really well in the 308. She did really well, same sort of story. Really brilliant shooting is not going to get the job done without a little bit of luck. So, and I should say, I'll come back to the cold bore, it's conceivable, but it'd be luckier still. It's not possible to guarantee. Hollywood is pretending, but it's not possible to guarantee. But I suppose that's really part of what this whole thing is about. Pardon me. Ultimately, these are from 7mm and then 30 cal and there's 338. The next ones that I plan on doing shortly will be either a little tiny one with a 6BR with a 109 grain 6mm bullet, or the 750 grain in the 50, or it's the 505 Gibbs running the 510 or the 50 cal 750 grain projectile. And really to look at the group side of things. That's it. I'm suspecting that as much as people say, oh, you just need a bigger bullet. You don't need the 408 like they had in the movies, or the 375, or you need a 416, or you need 50 cal, that sort of stuff. Yeah, listen, there's a little bit of advantage when you get into like the 416 Barrett. There would be a little bit of advantage to it. But these are a pretty good range of where I'm going to, what I suspect show you is the group is not necessarily going to be better or worse. They're both going to be very similar. Even though it's a little bullet that people think gets blown around a lot, it's actually a ballistic coefficient versus speed thing that matters there. But I suspect we're going to get a pretty decent group out of that. And I suspect where even this is going a bit slower, but it's a bigger bullet, it's going to have a pretty decent group too. But we'll see that and we'll analyze that later on. This one I do think, and I'll get into what I suppose the next bit of what is probably relevant to talk about here, and that is the impact on the can and what people are expecting and what they're likely to get. A little bit two different things. Okay, one of the things I mentioned there was the trajectory, the drop of the bullet. The one where I actually have evidence of the drop of the bullet to some degree or another is the one that we just shot, which was the 3338. Went through, the bullet went through, and you can see there is where it went through, about an inch low and probably about 3/4 of an inch off center, so an inch off center, that neck of the woods. It went straight through. When I say straight through, that's it. That can was largely, I think, positioned a tiny bit back, so probably in encouraging that angle, or maybe the real angle was probably a couple of degree more, but that was the angle of the projectile going straight through it. Yes, went straight through it. Now, for people who are expecting the Hollywood result of the can popping, it isn't the maths of things. No, the can is unlikely to pop. I think there's one way I can pull it off, but it is very, very unlikely to pop. There's a bit of science involved with this, but as you can see here, very neat holes around about 30 cal size. And a 30 cal projectile went through there. And this, if you watch the shot, what it did was
jumped up, dust, and it jumped up, and now it's on the ground.
A little bit like it might have been ricocheted, that sort of stuff, because it bounced up, I think is what some people thought, and certainly we didn't know it actually happened that time. But it bounced up for a very specific reason, and I suppose I'll go into a little bit of the science of that. If you Google this yourself, you'll see it yourself. What is the speed it needs for hydrostatic shock, which is what causes expansion? There's explosive decompression. So if you have pressure inside something and you pop it, it'll explode. So shooting a Coke can, even with a 22, or something with pressure in it, you get little pressure filling caps to put on water bottles so you can put pressure in them so they'll pop. That's explosive decompression. The moment you crack it, it expands so quickly because of the pressure's getting out, that causes a pop. The other thing that causes a pop is a projectile where it causes hydrostatic shock. So when it hits the fluid, and the fluid runs away that quickly that creates a pressure that it creates. Then once again, you have this explosive decompression sort of thing happening because of that, if it can pop the outside of it. But otherwise, the wound cavities and all that sort of stuff are created by hydrostatic shock. You whack something, it runs away faster than the thing's coming, because you get this sort of ricochet, or this bounce of effect. That happens with enough of a flat face hitting a fluid. So that can happen at quite low speed, the likes of a 22, the likes of a 357 Magnum, the likes of a largely pistol or a revolver caliber, all the low sort of power calibers with a round end to them, or soft nose bullets where the bullet will distort. Then that happens because you get this flat face that's traveling quickly. And then you can be as slow as down at 800 feet per second and 700 feet per second, and still create a certain amount of that if you've got enough flat face hitting the fluid to make it run out of the way, get out of the way faster than the thing's coming. When it comes to a Spitzer projectile, so a pointy bullet, then there's zero flat face coming. So it doesn't really have a flat face. What it does is it pushes in, and then it pushes in and it pushes the fluid out of the road. So it doesn't, and then the speed it needs for a pointy bullet to do things, Google this, 2,000 to 2,500 feet per second for a Spitzer bullet. And actually, the more efficient the bullet is at traveling through the air, so a higher ballistic coefficient bullet has even a better shape for pushing through fluid. Air is a form of fluid as well, so pushing form of fluid has even a better shape at that, so it actually creates even more speed. So the majority of the projectiles that I'm using are going to need to be around 2,500 feet per second at target to create or to create hydrostatic shock to make the can pop. So it's not really conceivable. Even a 416 that's really up there, and you're running a 500 grain or a 550 grain projectile, or even a 600 grain projectile, you get them up there and you really push things up, and you get it up in the 3,500 feet per second. It's a little bit past the math of the 416, but you get it up there, it's still going to have dropped to the 2,200, 2,300 feet per second out at 1,800 yards. So at that level, it's unlikely to cause what we're talking about. It might just get there, and I suppose one difference I would say between the can I was using here and the can we have now is they've converted to a rip top, so maybe that would, and I'll show you another little piece in a minute, maybe that would cause it to pop. But really it's not likely to. And for all, I'm not legally able to use the 416 projectile, 416 Barrett over here. I can use a projectile if I build a custom cartridge, but the 416 Barrett I can't use over here. So it's an unlikely thing and a pretty difficult test to pull off. It's not going to shoot the can easily because it's this bigger rifle that shoots fast and all the maths of that sort of stuff. As I'm sort of already showing, the group from even a 308 was very, very similar to the group from the 338 or 3338 Lapua Magnum. Group size is about the same. It's the luck that's getting in the middle there. So yeah, there's a lot of rounds can go into making luck go your way. What I would say is what did happen here, the bullet went in and the fluid had to get out the road of those projectile. And what made it actually bounce up was, if you look down here, you can see, and you can certainly see in the video as well, there's a dent there. What's that dent? That dent is the shape of that bracket. That bracket has the same pulse, it has that same dent there, and or sorry, where's that dent there? And what that is that's the fluid now still had to expand to let that bullet through. It expanded, and that's what bounced the thing off and sat on the side there. Didn't pop, not enough force to pop it, but there was enough expansion of that bullet going through to cause that dent there. So I think the one way that I can pull off, which is after a bit of a trick shot, I suppose, the one way I think I can pull it off is if I can get a 750 grain projectile, this is obviously the whole thing, so just the projectile, to actually hit the ground a foot in front. So hit the bullets, the cans here, the bullet here, it comes up and hits sideways on there, still traveling at least 1,000 feet per second, and that big 750 grain bullet hits sideways. I think that might be enough to pop it, including the fact we now have a rip top, so it's not quite as strong. So maybe that will get the explosion. I don't know. We'll see. But that's. I've also, for those who have studied ricochets, we certainly have seen a fair bit of what actually happens out of hitting the dirt. It's only that they don't go dead straight, so the chances of pulling this off are very, very slim. But certainly I will be aiming a little bit short with one of these, hoping to the variance of the wind and the MOA and all that sort of stuff to either hit it or bounce just in front of it. We'll see. So I think that's probably about a list of things. The reason we're doing all this sort of stuff, it is content, it is interesting. There's different calibers we can try at this sort of stuff. It's backing at a mile rather than the 3,000 yards and the 2 miles and things that we have shoot at for a lot of years, which makes it a little bit more attainable. It is a challenge that other people can take on, and it is a challenge that other people are going to be able to do. I'll stress, it takes luck, but we've all got a bit of luck, and you only need the right bit of luck at the right time and a few rounds down there, or a lot of rounds down there to take out a soup can. It is still something that is great. You've got to understand wind, you've got to follow the wind, you've got to read the dirt, you've got to be able to see things, you have to be able to pull this off. It can be done by yourself. It's nicer to do in the two side of things where you can both focus on your jobs and be able to pass on. But I suppose it's also just really interesting. The hydrostatic shock side of things, this is more a hunting thing, and I suppose I should touch on that a little bit. People would say, well, why don't you use a flatter nose bullet or more of a hunting projectile, all that sort of stuff? Well, here's the Peter and Paul, or the trade-off thing. So you're suggesting I use a less accurate bullet that will do a better job for popping the can. Sounds like a larger group with even less chance of hitting the can. It's why hunting isn't done out at, not by people who are being ethical, out at long range. There is trying to go further than that sort of stuff. There's animal movement, all the rest of it, but the likes of a round passing straight through an animal and just seriously injuring it to die 3 weeks down the road is extremely high when you've slowed back down that projectile. That's all about that same sort of thing. It's all about, and then we come to the same place. You have a bullet with a flatter nose, soft nose, with all the things to make it expand and make it and do more. Yes, that would work at that bullet speed, but your accuracy is going to diminish at that level. The bullet is a bit worse shape, even if it's very accurate at 100 yards, it's then flying through the air slower, it's slowing down more, it has a lesser ballistic coefficient, so it gets moved by the wind more, so it becomes less accurate by the nature of everything, it's slowing down more. It's a Peter or Paul thing, you steal from Peter to pay Paul. And I suppose we want to do it as real as we can, but also do a little bit of educating and a little bit of fun along the way. Anyway, I think that's the overview of what I can tell you about this. We've got more rounds to try. Like I said, the next cabs off the rank, or this stage anyway. There's 6 PRC and there's all sorts of things we could try. I really am looking forward to trying this little 6 BR, which is, it's out past what it was designed for. Still a super, like a lot of the 6mm target cartridges, very, very accurate little rounds. So I really like to see it, moderate conditions, and see what it can hold down. And this big fella here, there's also the 45-120 we've got in a custom setup there. So either one of these I want to see. And really what I want to try and pull off with this is, like I said, I suppose a direct hit, awesome, yes. Maybe there's enough expansion being a 50 cal to do the thing by itself, but bullet speed, I suspect it's just going to do very, very similar to what happened with 30338. But ideally I can ricochet it on and get the can to pop and have the little explosion, all that sort of stuff there, out of a little bit of holding the mouth right angle, I suppose. But yeah, ultimately, the as normal, the Hollywood side of things is, yeah, you shoot something at 100 yards and yes, that's all quite conceivable to do. It all looks the same, and you don't actually you just talk about the distance. Happens in some places on YouTube also. We'll set up all the things to make it look good, and we'll just tell you it was a long way. But anyway, that's another conversation altogether. Like I said, looking forward. Those are probably the next two that are coming when we get the conditions to go through and do that. But just a little bit of explaining what we're up to, why we're doing it this way, and I hope it's entertaining. I hope you enjoy it, and hope you're learning a bit from it too. Anyway, guys, thanks very much for checking in. We'll catch you next time.